The community hall smelled like cardamom and cold steel when I walked in, the kind of mingled sweetness and metal that tells you there will be tea and also consequences. Fluorescence hummed with that electric mosquito wine. Rows of white chairs faced a dais framed by plastic flowers. And on the back wall, a screen flickered with a silence that felt expectant. Zoya stood there in her honey gold wedding jora, a veil pinned like a crescent moon to her hair, lips tight, eyes swollen from a fight she had not wanted to have at her own reception. Beside her, the photographer Kamal, formal name, Kamal Ahmed. Professional name, Lightline held his camera low, as if the lens had a conscience. Around us, the families gathered into factions, whisper threads catching like lint under fingernails. And at the center of the room, placed on a velvet tray like something burnt and still smoking. My bracelet lay under a strip of masking tape with my name on it. "Before we go further," Kamal said, voice mild, "I can't shoot in this room until she's here." He meant me. I was already here. My sister was not. It wasn't subtle. His assistants carried the light stands to the side and folded their arms. The DJ killed the background track mid-beat. And the hall sharpened into a strange quiet in which metal spoons clinked in glasses and nobody actually drank. Zoya glanced at me in apology. The way you look at a person you asked for help and then realized you're asking for more than help you. We're asking for a verdict. A velvet rope had been strung around the dais for crowd control. The knot was slack, as if someone had been pulled back and then pushed in again. Kamal set his camera on the dais, turned the screen to the room, and connected it via a long HDMI cable to the projector. The screen blinked to life. On the left, the raw capture panel. On the right, a photo frozen in mid-gesture. Me, earlier that afternoon, hand reaching to adjust Zoya's veil in the bridal suite. Gold bracelet winking against my wrist like a living thing. Light temperature for 300K. Timestamp 17 hours, 18 minutes, and 44 seconds. Then a second shot. Closer, my hand falling away, leaving behind the veil and the bracelet, which the mirror caught in echo. The third shot showed my sleeve and nothing else. And then the fourth. My sister's fingers moving quickly where mine had just been. "Seems I'm not family." The sentence came out before I meant to give it air. I felt it hang above the chairs like a damp cloth you couldn't wring dry. My voice stayed soft. Dignity is temperature. I keep mine cool to keep my judgment hard. In the next minutes, you'll see how everything that happened this week, every receipt, every clause, every quiet call was designed to put us right here, so that Zoya could keep her wedding and I could keep my word to her. And my sister could no longer pretend that what she does is a kind of love. The stakes were not money. The stakes were reputation and custody over our own names. One error, one false accusation, one recorded lie. And I would be the woman who destroyed her best friend's wedding and accused her sister in public. But nothing tonight would be unrecorded, unfiled, or unserved. The tray with the bracelet sat on a table to my left, next to a silver pen and a guest book open to a page where no one wanted to write. The bracelet's clasp pointed like a needle to the door where Sarah would come in. A woman in a sequined shawl coughed, and the sound splintered. Someone's perfumed the heavy white florals are auntie's proof with their wrists. Layered over the smell of samosas cooling too quickly, I counted 6 ceiling vents. One blew colder than the rest. The fluorescent tubes pulsed by fractions as if the building were holding its breath. Kamal kept the slide frozen. "We won't proceed," he said gently, "to the hall until she's in the frame." Then the door at the back opened, and Sarah came in on heels too high for sincerity, carrying a clutch that was too small for a conscience. She smiled at me as if I had gotten lost and she had found me. On her left wrist, a red thread charm. On her right, nothing. The room styled its silence differently now, cresting into attention like a wave debating whether to break. I did not raise my voice. I never do. The first time that choice mattered, I was 9. And the neighbor boy had claimed a found coin was his because he said it faster, louder. I took him to the guard, asked which tower had lost in found protocols, wrote down the building policy number, walked the boy there, and watched him hand the coin to the clerk. The clerk stamped a pink form. The boy sulked. The coin went into a drawer labeled 48 hours. 48 hours later, no one had claimed it. And the coin came to me in an envelope with a signature I practiced then and own now. In the hall, Zoya's mother whispered to my mother. My mother's lips tightened into the oval. That means she would like me to solve this without anyone bleeding social capital. The aircon coughed once. A paper place card slid off a table near the back and skated to the floor. Baji, Sarah said to me, using the polite older sister form like it was an afterthought accessory. What is all this? The thing about my sister is that her tells are theatrical and therefore legible. When she lies, she goes easy on details and heavy on arrangement where she stands. What she floats with her hands. How she invites the room to absorb a meaning without reducing it to a statement that could be cross-examined. She has always been well-dressed for ambiguity. She once borrowed a friend's down payment and called it a vote of confidence. She once told our mother that a job offer was pending board approvals, meaning none existed yet. She does not steal often, but when she does, she prefers small, beautiful things that could be gifts if you keep the story soft. This, I said, and kept my hands at my sides, is your chance to tell the truth once in public. So we don't have to do this across months with letters. My phone vibrated once in my clutch with the precise weight of a calendar reminder. 20 o'clock. Hall reservation, clause 11b, disruption. I had written myself these notes in neutral nouns. Not punish, not expose, not shame. Disruption is measurable. It has timestamps and decibel levels and names that rented microphones. I let the vibration fade without looking down. I had started the week thinking I would be a bridesmaid and ended it with chain of custody forms in my purse. I had asked the venue manager, Farah, for the incident log template the day I arrived for the Mendy. Because I noticed an off note. The bracelet was heavier on my wrist when Zoya hugged me. And Sarah's eyes went to it with a chef's attention, cataloging ingredients not yet her own. In our family, that bracelet has lived inside stories. My Nana bought it for my Nani the year they moved to Karachi from Lucknow. A gold rope that pooled like sunlight and could be sold like a small house if the worst came to us. It had been given to me when I turned 30 and came with a promise that I would know when to wear it. I wore it that day because it is a small house and a promise, and my best friend was getting married. But the first off note was not her glance. It was that Sarah called the bracelet the rope, which is what my Nana called it, and what only Nana ever did. The word curled in the air between us like a line you could climb if you were careful. I said nothing. I tested the clasp privately in the washroom, noting its resistance, and took a photo of it on my wrist with the clasp in frame. A shot tight enough to read the etched jeweler's mark inside. A tiny ZS-22. I texted the photo to myself with the caption, 1711 Bridal Suite Mirror. Zoya's building temp for 200K. It's because I trust my records more than I trust the way stories warp after tea. The second off note came when Sarah asked to keep things on her while we helped Zoya into her dress. Her hand hovered at the dressing table drawer, then closed it, and then she laughed as if drawers were funny. I moved the bracelet from the table into my wrist again, twisted the clasp once, felt its click through skin. When Kamal came in to test light, I asked for one shot aimed at my hands, then apologized and told him not to save it. He saved it anyway. He is very good at his job, and I had already told him what to look for. These are the open loops I filed quietly as the week unspooled. A missing place card for the groom's aunt that would later tell me how the seating chart had been edited. A contact in Sarah's phone saved as V, a single letter, which meant venture or villain or vendor, and was probably the pawn shop she once used when she told me she was relacketing assets. A drawer lock at our mother's house that Sarah kept for safekeeping, and that. I had copied the key for last year when her story did not fully close. A phrase my mother uses when she is complicit by exhaustion. We'll settle it after, a promise that is currency and also debt. And a document I discovered 3 nights ago while finding the hall's insurance policy. A subclause in the photography contract that made Kamal not just a vendor, but a kind of witness's refusal to shoot. Under Section 7D triggered an incident protocol that required a recorded resolution before resumption. or the shoot would be deemed materially impeded by client-side obstruction, unlocking a refund and a penalty. It sounds dry. It is also powerful. Minimum decibel, maximum effect. So tonight, I let the room own its temperature. I requested more water from the staff because water makes people wait without feeling like they are waiting. And because cold glasses sweat, the sweating makes time tactile. Baji, Sarah said again, a little more plaintive. This is Zoya's night. Don't make this about you. I agree, I said. Let's keep it about Zoya. Kamal nodded once, eyes on his screen. Zoya's father took a step forward, then stopped. He was an engineer. It showed in his posture. Farah, the venue manager, hugged her clipboard closer, the way people hold items when they're about to lend authority. Mr. Raza, the lawyer I had brought as a guest, I do that sometimes. Lawyers are good at weddings, mostly because they know what silence costs stood at the periphery, as if he were arguing with the idea of intervening. Bilal, my banker friend, had texted twice that afternoon, if needed. I can certify purchase history, and you still owe me dessert for making me open the vault metadata on a Saturday. He was not here. He did not need to be. His email sat cold and complete in my inbox with 5 attachments and the words certified underlined by habit. The hall's lights hummed. Outside, the night pressed its cheek to the glass doors, warmer than the room, and the glass fogged and cleared like a chest breathing. We'll do this gently, I said, and we'll do this properly. My tone is a tool, and I sharpen it on patience. Kamal, play sequence 1. He clicked. The screen showed the 4 shots from earlier. Then a 5th. The mirror again, but angled higher. In it, the corner of the dressing table. The bracelet's reflection kissing the edge of the frame. And my sister's right hand moving through the negative space where the bracelet had been. The data panel scrolled. 17 hours, 19 minutes, and 6 seconds. ISO 800, 1/125th f2. 8. The micro scratch on the clasp. Visible, magnified to the size of a thumbnail moon. And this, Kamal said mildly, is sequence 2. And the screen shifted to the corridor outside the bridal suite, a wide angle from the ceiling camera. That Farah had approved 3 months ago when they upgraded for guest safety. It showed Sarah walking alone, hand pressed against her clutch in the spot where something recently acquired would rest. It showed her approach the banquet coordinator's table. It showed her lean in and say something we could not hear. It showed the coordinator, young, tired, eager hand, her a spare place card and a marker. It showed Sarah write 3 letters on the card, VIP. It showed her slide that card into the second row of the ceremony seating, where it would later replace the groom's aunt's actual card. It showed nothing else, and that was enough. The camera's time code matched the corridor sensor log and the coordinator's chalkboard. Scribbles logged by the runner who documented everything to prove he had worked. She will say it was urgent, I said quietly. She will say she needed to seat a friend near the front. She will say she intended to fix it later. The room's air tasted like metal because people were holding their breath through teeth. Kamal pressed pause. I can't shoot, he repeated, until she's in the frame. Sarah smiled her I'm hurt smile. So your plan is to accuse me and ruin this night? No, I said. My plan is to make sure that when tomorrow comes, no one can rewrite what happened tonight as a misunderstanding. You can correct me now if I'm wrong. Or I can file notices in the morning to prevent the bracelet's resale and the venue's policy breach from being buried under family dinners. Her eyes narrowed a millimeter. She was calculating. Somewhere inside her head she was weighing how heavy a little gold rope could be compared to her reputation, a thing she spends liberally because she believes it regenerates in the dark. The problem with reputations is that they are like skin. They cover you, and when they break you have to heal around the scar. She looked at our mother. Our mother's face had become the kind that prayers live in. I turned my left wrist over and showed the faint crescent where the bracelet had rested all afternoon. The paler line where it had pressed the skin like a quiet hand. Farah, I said Clause 11b. Read it. She cleared her throat and read from the clipboard. In the event of a material disruption caused by a guest or member of the party, The vendor may suspend services until the disruption is resolved. The host shall empower the vendor to obtain, record, and preserve all evidence relevant to the disruption and may call upon the venue manager to certify the timeline and attendees. Thank you, I said. This is not a court, but we will certify the timeline and we will record who said what and when. If you like, we can move this to the office. Or we can do it here. But we are not continuing out of respect for Zoyan till it is resolved. In the office, the air is always colder. It is the nature of offices to keep things that way so that people don't sweat and smudge the papers. Also, the walls are closer, which makes the truth pace differently. I had already walked there earlier that day. I knew the carpet pattern and the chair that creaked. I knew the exact reach of the security camera's blind spot, which is why I had asked for the chair to be moved. Sarah watched me watching her. She knew that look. She has watched it on my face since we were small, and I turned the page quickly when I saw what story was trying to be written. She lifted her chin. Fine, she said. Let's go to the office. We walked down the corridor, past the kitchen where oil still murmured in deep vats and the smell of garlic grew thick like a curtain you walk through to change seasons. Zoya stayed in the hall. This was not her labor to do. Kamal walked behind with his camera still in hand, the shot count at the bottom a live number thinking for him. Farah led us into the office and switched on the overhead light, which buzzed like a mosquito that had studied law. I sat, Sarah stood. Farah sat. Kamal stayed near the door. Mr. Raza declined to sit and instead looked at the framed photos on the wall, former weddings in collages of joy. Recording, Kamal said. The camera's red LED winked. He angled it so that the table, our hands, and the velvet tray were in view. The bracelet lay on it, still the shape of my wrist because metal remembers heat for longer than we give it credit. Beneath the tray sat a chain of custody form. I had filled the top half in earlier because I had learned that preparation was not paranoia. It was insurance against the stories that congeal when light isn't present. I slid the form a centimeter toward Sarah. Read, I said. She did, lips moving. Item, gold rope bracelet. Marking ZS22. Estimated weight, 42 grams. Provenance, family heirloom, transferred to Amina Khan, daughter of Rahim and Sita Khan. On her 30th birthday, recorded on You Really Typed All This. I filled it. She looked at me with a kind of disdain that had always felt like a dare. You're making a scene. No, I said. I am documenting a scene. Kamal's assistant entered with a small white box. He placed it on the table. Inside a portable scale, a loop, a microfiber cloth. Kamal is thorough. He does not do it for drama. He does it because metadata tells the story we forget. Here is the issue, I said, in the tone I use when I explain an audit to a team that would rather talk about culture. This bracelet was on my wrist at 17:18. At 17:19, it was no longer on my wrist, and your hand was in the frame. At 17:24, the corridor footage shows you moving something into your clutch. At 18:02, the coordinator used a VIP card. We both know how that got there. At 18:17, you returned to the bridal suite. At 18:20, the bracelet was found in the second drawer of the dressing table, wrapped in a tissue, which is where it would be if someone intended to retrieve it quietly, later except Kamal's assistant found it. When he was getting fresh batteries because he documents rooms like they might be crime scenes, which is a habit I admire. I could have added that my banker friend had already sent the purchase history from the jeweler 12 years ago when my mother and father had taken a loan against the bracelet and repaid it. Signatures and wire confirmations stamped and recorded and closed. I could have added that the jeweler's mark matched, and that the jeweler, Mr. Zahir, had already texted his confirmation and offered to swear an affidavit if needed. I did not. I let the room breathe. It's cold. My sister folded her arms. You think I took it? I think I said you were going to borrow it without permission and then return it so that tomorrow you could say there was nothing to discuss. I think you intended to seat someone near the front who could be useful later. I think you've allowed yourself to live in that space between. I took and I meant to return because it's a space people give to family when they are tired. She flinched in that small way that means the truth is a stone you stubbed your toe on. Mr. Raza coughed politely. Would it help if we formalize this so that all parties can move on to the celebration? His voice had that sanded quality good lawyers cultivate. Texture, but no splinters. Amina, if you have the paperwork. I did. I always do. I pulled from my clutch the venue's incident form, the photographer's contract. It's my own affidavit template, the bank email printouts, and a notarization request I had pre-filled with the item description. I also had a revocation letter for anyone who claimed to speak in my name regarding the bracelet's sale or lien. It's addressed to whom it may concern, signed, dated. Witnessed, ready to be served if needed to any shop or third party identified later. I laid them in a stack like a calm deck of cards. Here is what we will do, I said. We will weigh the bracelet and photograph the clasp with the loop on both sides. We will record the mark again and certify the timestamp. Farah will sign as venue manager. Kamal will sign as vendor. Mr. Raza will sign as witness. I will sign as owner. Sarah will sign as present. Then we will return to the hall and Kamal will resume. And this thing will be closed here, with the understanding that if a similar incident occurs again with any item of mine, I will proceed to file a police report without an intermediate family phase. Sarah stared at the form as if it were a disrespect. You are making me sign like a criminal. I am making you sign like a person in a room where facts matter, I said. If you did not intend harm, then this will protect you as well, because it will show that the item was returned without damage and before the event resumed. Her chin lifted. I never said I would return it. It came out then. The impulse she had kept soft, but could not soften into innocence. Kamal's camera clicked once because he couldn't help it. I did not smile. I let the sentence rest between us like a plate you had dropped. Not loudly, but with enough force that everyone saw. Then we are done with kindness, I said quietly. Farah, please call your security head to note the incident, Mr. Raza. Kindly prepare a brief statement I can file with the station in the morning. I will move the bracelet to my bank box tonight. I will rescind any assumption that family is a guarantee of my property's safety. I will revoke any permission you imagine you have. And I will. We will. My mother said from the doorway, voice small and steady, address this at home. No, I said without heat. Home is where we fail to document. This is the place. The paper is here. The witnesses are here. The temperature is right. The room felt colder still. A toot strip of sunlight cut the carpet where the office door didn't close flush. The hall outside was warmer, and the light tried to enter and failed. I breathed once, slow. The air smelled like toner and new envelopes. Sarah sat. She picked up the pen. She signed. Her signature leaned uphill like it always does when she is angry. Farah signed. Her hand was steady. Kamal signed and added his business stamp line photography. Entin address. Phone like a seal on good wax. Mr. Raza signed in letters that did not tell you how smart he was. I signed last, then folded the top copy for myself and handed the second to Farah for the hall's records. When we returned to the hall, people pretended to be busy with napkins. That's the thing about public reckoning. It makes everyone a stagehand. Kamal lifted his camera and the room felt its spine return. He did not force cheer into his voice. He said we'll begin with the families. Groom's side first, then the bride's. He looked at me. And the sisters. Zoya reached for my hand as I stepped up. She squeezed twice, apology and thanks. The heavy lights warmed the top of my head. I felt the faint ring the bracelet had left, like a memory pressed into me by a small house I would never sell. My mother stood a row back, eyes shiny with a kind of tears that never fall because they are not invited. Our auntie in white jasmine leaned into the groom's and the one whose place card had been moved, and whispered, then pulled back as if her earrings had brushed against a secret. The shoot resumed and the DJ let the soft tabla begin again. And for a moment it felt like the night had been suspended on a nail and was now released. We moved through the sequence like a ledger closing. Camel's shutter ticked. Zoya laughed for real once, the kind of laugh that crinkles lashes. The hall smelled like warm milk because the caterers had rolled halwa out early to keep nervous hands busy. The fluorescent hum felt less like a warning and more like a ceiling doing its job. When the bouquet came, Zoya pressed a marigold into my palm instead. "Keep this," she said, low. "Trade you for the rope." I nodded and kept the marigold near my skin like a sun with petals. After the staged friends photo where we all leaned in too. Much because closeness in a picture substitutes for what it takes years to build. After the auntie's tableau and the uncle's pointed wallets. After the groom's cousin made a speech about loyalty that sounded like a man reminding himself what the word means. We ate. Everyone's voices rose half a step because food gives permission to talk. Sarah did not approach me. My mother tried to catch my eye. I let her look pass by like a car you didn't flag because you were not going that way. On the way out, the night wind kissed the sweat at the back of my neck. In the parking lot, the concrete held the day's heat. I lifted my hair off my skin and breathed the diesel smell in like a memory of weeks. We took buses and did not mind the way the city touched us. Zoya's father came to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "You saved the evening without taking it," he said. "Engineers make sentences that last." I did not say it out loud, but the line that lived in my head all night seems, "I'm not family," shifted slightly. What it meant here was not exclusion, but definition. If family is the word people use to excuse harm, then no, I am not family of that sort. If family is the thing you architect with, process, and choice, then perhaps I was building something truer. 2 days later, I executed the rest of the plan I had prepared while the Mendi henna dried on my palm in vines. I didn't photograph because beauty is not evidence. I made an appointment at Billow's branch and moved the bracelet to a bank box. We signed, stamped, recorded, and I walked out lighter by the exact weight of worry. I filed a courtesy letter with the neighborhood police station noting the incident, enclosing copies of signatures and timestamps. The sub-inspector initialed it with board formality that I find reassuring. I emailed Farah a thank you note with attachments. And she replied with "Received 9/12 recorded." I sent Kamal a gratuity and a short review that said what mattered. Not that he takes pretty photographs, though he does, but that he protects the story his camera tells. I scanned the venue's incident log and added it to my archive. I updated my Willius. I have one. It is not morbid to file one at 32, includes specific instructions. The bracelet goes to my goddaughter if I have no children. Otherwise, it goes to my child at 25 with a letter attached describing when and why it was worn. I recorded that letter on thick paper you cannot fold without thinking. I copied my mother and father on a second note from now on. Any item of mine borrowed by family will be signed for and returned the same way. I wrote it cleanly without an apology. I rescinded nothing about love. I rescinded only permissions not tendered in writing. Sarah called once on the third day. I did not pick up. She texted a soft fog of words. "You made me look like a thief. You're dramatic." You embarrass the family, and then, because she can, coffee? I did not reply. Mr. Raza drafted a brief letter addressed to her. Witnessed and sealed from this date. She is not to act as my agent in matters personal or financial. And any representation to that effect is void. The letter was not about punishment. It was an administrative act. The signature did not shake. At home, my mother stood in the kitchen and peeled cucumbers. The knife made a whisper sound against the skin. "We could have settled it after," she said finally. "We did settle it," I said, rinsing the cutting board. "After is where we hide what we don't want to name." We named it. And Zoya had her photos. The city cooled itself with sea air that week. I walked to the bank once more to place another document with the bracelet. The lobby smelled like lemon and policy. The marble floors reflected me back whole. The safe deposit room is all protocol. A signature here. Key, a second key, a private booth. A small box that looks like it should hold shoes, but actually holds things you cannot put on your feet. I opened the box and touched the bracelet with the back of my finger like a doctor's gentle test. The gold was room temperature. That felt right. I wrote a line on the inventory card. Moved, recorded, certified. Process is also a kind of prayer. On Friday, Zoya called. "You know the weirdest thing?" she said. "Today my uncle told me that seeing you manage that moment made my cousins update the charity. Board's conflict of interest policy. They asked me to help. I said yes. Small ripples make circles you didn't draw. I imagined that charity board, a dining table ringed with names. And a new page slid under an old one, words like receipts and recusal taking their seats. Somewhere else, maybe the venue updated their training manual to include an example that looked like us. A photograph of a form with our signatures redacted and a bolded line beneath. If you see it, certify it. Somewhere else. Perhaps the coordinator bought herself a better pen with a bonus Farah. Quietly gave her for handling the evening with grace. Perhaps she saved the place cards she hadn't used and will bring them to her niece for pretend games that look like organizing the world. That weekend, I took the marigold Zoya had given me, now dry and deep orange like a sunset caught and stored, and placed it in a small glass bowl beside my bed. I do not keep many talismans, but I like how the marigold looks like a sun you can hold. The bracelet lives in a vault now, and that is good. The sun lives beside my bed, and that is better. I watered the plant on the sill, a hardy thing that does not ask for drama, and texted Zoya a photo of the bowl. She replied with a heart. And a photo of her signing the new policy at the charity's office. I saved it with the file name Zoya_policy_signed_0917. Later, at dinner, my father cleared his throat the way he does when he is going to say something about how the world works. "Strong fences," he said, struggling in a gentle way for a phrase, "make good. Invitations." "Neighbors," my mother corrected, smiling thin. Then, after a moment, she added, "and daughters." On Monday, I got an email from Kamal with a set of watermarked proofs. For early review, he wrote. I opened them in my office, sunlight hitting my left hand in a rectangle that warmed my fingers as if my work itself were a heater. I clicked through. In one, Zoya's laugh made everything in the frame lean toward it. In another, my mother's eyes were soft in a way they had not been that night. She had found a second to rest against a chair and let her face hold what it wanted. In a third, the wedding party looked like a tide a moment before it recedes. All potential energy about to move. Then one more. A candid I didn't know he'd taken. Me signing the chain of custody form, my hair falling, the marigold in my hand like a small sun, and the bracelet on the table like a quiet moon. The photo had the stillness of a solved equation. Kamal had added at the bottom of his email a line that was not professional and therefore mattered. "Thank you for making it easy to do the right thing." In the afternoon, I received another message from the jeweler. Mr. Zahir, he had prepared a tiny velvet pouch with a new clasp, certified and numbered, offered as a courtesy for a woman who knows how to keep a thing whole. I drafted a response to decline, not because I am proud, but because the bracelet does not need a new clasp hand. Paused. Then I wrote instead, "Thank you. Please prepare it and hold it at the shop. I will retrieve it when it makes sense." Filed the email in a folder labeled Bracelet 2025 Service. Sarah did not call again. She did, however, send a long message to our mother, which our mother responded to with a short one. I did not see either, 'cause I had told myself a rule. I would not read messages that were meant to make me the villain in my own records. That is what afters are for, retellings with narrative drift. I prefer recorded air. 2 weeks later, I stood in a different hall for a different event and watched an usher move a seat card and then put it back again without being asked. He caught my eye and grinned, the way people do when they have learned a trick and are proud of using it for good. I smiled back. The room smelled like paint. The light was warm and forgiving. There was a draft from a door that somebody propped open so that the aunties wouldn't suffocate in their velvet. I made a small note in my phone. Breathing lights before reveals. Not because I needed it now, but because one day I would want to remember how to stage truth without breaking the people inside it. On my bedside table, the marigold dried further, its center collapsing a little the way sunsets do at the end, the color deepening. I set beside it a pen with good ink and the envelope for the letter. I updated whenever something in me shifted toward more precise. The envelope is not sealed. It waits for me to sign and date it, and then to sign and date it again. It's like a life I am countersigning with choices that look small and are not. I did not send Sarah the photo proofs. I did not send her the letter from Mr. Reza. I did not show her the vault log that recorded when the bracelet went in and out, though I could, easily. I chose a different sentence. I called my younger cousin, who is 19, and asked her to help me build a spreadsheet for the charity's new policy rollout. She arrived with her laptop and her eyebrows knit with earnestness. And I made tea, and we worked. And we wrote words like indemnified and countersigned and complied. And she asked me why I like those words so much. Because they are verbs that keep things from slipping, I said. Because they make boundaries into bridges. Because they allow for mercy while protecting justice. She nodded like she was wearing a crown no one could see. We added a column titled Witness, and she put her name there once, twice, shyly. I didn't tell her that one day someone might ask her to choose between family and truth. I didn't tell her that the trick is that there is no choice if you use the right forms. I let her discover it later, in a room with good light and one cold vent and the sound of a camera that only clicks when it should. Weeks passed. The bracelet stayed asleep in the vault. Zoya sent me a photo of her and her husband in their new apartment, houseplants preening like they had found a home. My mother made kheer and sent half to me, and I ate it while standing in the kitchen because good things often arrive when you are not performing gratitude but simply inhabiting it. The city breathed wet air on evenings when the sea decided we should remember it exists. I walked sometimes without my phone and felt my shoulders lower the way they do when you are not keeping a ledger in your hands. Once at a market, I picked up a scarf that felt like water and let it slide through my fingers. A woman next to me said, "It suits you," and I thought of the bracelet. And the weight of a small house, and the way a marigold dries into something deep and light at once. I bought the scarf and kept the receipt, not because I would need to prove it, but because I love how a small rectangle of paper says, in print, that a thing moved from one ledger to another cleanly. Sometimes, late, the old sentence visits for a second and then leaves. Seems a not family. It was a bruise once. It is a boundary now. It does not ache. It simply marks. Kamal delivered the final album in a box that clicked shut with a sound like a good clasp. I placed it on my shelf beside the binder where I keep copies of important papers. The dull, beautiful archives that make a life feel less knife-edge. On the album's first page, he had embossed Zoya's name and the date. On the last, without asking me, he had printed the candid of the chain of custody page and the marigold and the bracelet together. And beneath it, a tiny caption in silver ink recorded, "Witnessed, resolved." I touched the silver ink with my fingertip, and then, because this is who I am, I wrote the date in my ledger and the action album received, stored, referenced. The city exhaled. The night settled. The room held its temperature like a promise. And I slept the way you do when you have filed the day and closed the folder and turned off the light, knowing what you own and what you owe and what you will never again let someone borrow without a form. If this story helped you breathe and plan, share it with someone who needs a calm blueprint. Want your own dignified justice narrative architected with receipts? Tell me the bones, and I'll build the spine.